Hello, John Terrell here. Today we're going to talk about Streets of New Capenna and its application to my lower powered environment. There are a lot of cards that I'm testing for that cube, especially when we figure in the Commander product for New Capenna. Welcome to Cultic Cube, where we cube religiously. We make you better at cube and make your cube better. So the cube of the hour is Petty Nobility. That's my lower powered 450 card cube. It's not rarity restricted. It may look a little more like a peasant cube than a more traditional higher powered cube, but there's plenty of rares to go around. It's a Jenny Johnny focused environment. It's not meant to be particularly fast or spiky. The whole idea is to allow people to build up cool engines and go off and do fun things. So let's get into it here. I've had a chance now to play with almost all of these cards. I've had some good play sessions with Petty Nobility and the new stuff, so that's exciting. All right, white. Our first card is Backup Agent. This is a common for 1 and a white. It's a creature, human, citizen. It's a 1/1. When Backup Agent enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So this isn't the most exciting card in the world, but I have a +1/+1 counter strategy available in the cube. This is a nice way of pushing white in that direction a little more, and white's already got lots of +1/+1 counters kind of tools. It's a card that we've seen versions of before, like there's Bond Beetle for just a single green mana. More interestingly, maybe in War of the Spark, we got Pollen Bright Druid, who's 1 and a green for a 1/1 creature elf druid. And when she enters the battlefield, you can either put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, or you can proliferate. So that's cool. That modality is quite nice, especially later in the game. If you got your counters thing going, she can really beef up the board. Anyway, Backup Agent is a good card to know about. Next up, we've got Citizen's Crowbar. This is an uncommon. It's an artifact equipment. It's one of these semi-newfangled artifacts that cost colored mana, cost 1 and a white to cast. When Citizen's Crowbar enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token, and then attach Citizen's Crowbar to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has the ability pay a white mana, tap, sacrifice Citizen's Crowbar, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And its equip cost is 2 generic mana. Okay, so that's sort of a lot of text. What you're basically getting here is a white grizzly bear. Because you cast this, you create a 1/1 token, and this gets attached to it automatically, and this thing gives that 1/1 +1/+1. So you make yourself a bear. This looks a heck of a lot like Ancestral Blade from M20. I rather like Ancestral Blade. I think that's a good card. It's exactly the same. Ancestral Blade costs 1 and a white, and you make a 1/1. This time it's a white soldier. You attach this thing to it, and this thing gives it +1/+1. So same deal. But Ancestral Blade doesn't have this disenchant mode like Citizen's Crowbar does. Also importantly, Ancestral Blade is only 1 to equip. So 2 to cast, 1 to equip. The new card, Citizen's Crowbar, is 2 to cast and 2 to equip. That's a drag. I've already been annoyed by that, playing with this card. 2 to cast, 2 to equip seems like a lot for an effect that just gives +1/+1. I mean, this is a Leonin Scimitar after all, right? Leonin Scimitar from Mirrodin was 1 generic mana to cast, 1 generic mana to equip, and it gives +1/+1. So I do like that this card brings along a body, and also it has this disenchant mode, which is why I am interested in it, because I really strongly dislike running actual disenchants, naturalize effects in the cube. It feels like such a waste of a slot. But I very much like things that can disenchant, but that do other things as well, or have additional modes. So that's nice. I like that you can sacrifice the crowbar and blow something up. It's cute. It's flavorful. If nothing else, it's a bear. It's a bear that can do some other stuff. It's not terrible. Next, Inspiring Overseer. This is a common for 2 and a white. It's a creature, angel, cleric. It's a 2/1, has flying. When Inspiring Overseer enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life and draw a card. I haven't been playing SNC Booster Draft, Retail Draft, but, I follow the discourse, and people have been calling this a mythic common. which I can well understand. I guess part of that is that Blue White Skies is supposed to be such a good archetype in this draft format. But anyway, it's simply a good card. We've got something like a Windrake, but it replaces itself, and it gives you a little tiny drip of life. Wow, what a cool card. You all probably know I love Cloud Conceer in blue. I was super excited when we got Priest of Ancient Lore for white from that Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set, who's the same as this new card, Inspiring Overseer, except it doesn't fly. It's a dwarf cleric. Inspiring Overseer, you know, it flies. It's even better. Of course, you can do blink things with it and so on, but also just whatever. It gives you quite a reasonable body, and it gives you back a card. What is not to like? Now, Mage's Attendant. This is an uncommon. 2 and a white for a creature cat rogue, and it's a 3/2. When Mage's Attendant enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 blue wizard creature token with the ability pay 1 generic mana, sacrifice this creature, and counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1 generic mana. So, we've got a Curse Catcher, or we've got a 3 mana 3/2 that brings along with it a 1/1 Curse Catcher. I like that. This card is very efficient. The little Curse Catcher thing, it's often not hugely impactful in my experience, but it's something that can mess with your opponent's plans. It's something that they can forget about, and you can just get them sometimes. So it's nice that it's got this little bit of upside that's very cool. And look, you're paying 3 mana and you're getting 2 bodies with a total of 4 power and 3 toughness across those 2 bodies. This is a totally fine rate. Even if your little blue wizard never threatens to mess up your opponent's plans or make them play off curve, sort of doesn't matter. And of course, we can blink this thing and make more 1/1s. That's cool. I don't know that this is better than something like Attended Knight much of the time. I think I prefer the 2/2 first strike to the 3/2 body. Anyway, similar card, and its little buddy does cool things. Rafine's Informant. This is a common for 1 and a white. It's a creature human wizard, and it's a 2/1. When Rafine's Informant enters the battlefield, it connives. To connive means draw a card and then discard a card. If you discarded a non-land card, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This is a very good card as well. The dream is you've got a 2 mana 3/2. That's neat, and that can certainly happen. I find myself more often than not just pitching a land. Then you've got a 2 mana 2/1, you've got this little goblin piker, but it's a piker who looted when it entered the battlefield. So that's quite good. You all know I love drawing cards. Rafine's Informant, it says draw a card on it. What is not to love? It's cute, and it can interact with other synergies, of course. It, can do the counters thing. It's a fine flicker target. It can bend things, which, can be useful, obviously. We can get value out of the yard. All right, on to blue. A Little Chat. This is an uncommon. It's an instant for 1 and a blue. It has Casualty 1. As you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power 1 or greater. When you do, copy that spell. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. Here we've got a 2 mana cantrip with some card selection. You can sacrifice something and get to do this twice. So you look at a total of 4 cards and get to pick a total of 2 cards. This could turn on a blue Aristocrats deck. I'm not really there, but I like that that's becoming more of a possibility. And in the future, I could look to pushing blue harder towards sacrifice. I mean, that could be a thing. For instance, back in Khan's block, there was that blue-black sacrifice deck available with that exploit mechanic. Sidisi's Faithful is the only one that comes to mind right now, that single blue mana for an 0/4 that has exploit, and when it exploits something, you bounce something. Okay, next up we've got Make Disappear. This is a common. It's an instant for 1 and a blue. Has Casualty 1, just like A Little Chat. And it says counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 generic mana. So we've got a miscount kind of effect, but if you sacrifice something, you can copy it. So that's very cool. I like this card too. I'm here to tell you, though, that I still can't keep the name straight. A Little Chat and Make Disappear. I don't know why I've got this mental block, but I keep confusing the 2 cards. I'll even stare at them in hand and I'll think I have the one and not the other. Like, I'll have A Little Chat in hand and think, hey, I can counter something. No, I cannot. I cannot counter something. Anyway, it's a good card. I'm happy to take as many of these 2 mana soft counters as I can get my hands on. It's not as good as Mana Leak, of course. It's probably not as good as Lose Focus, which is another similar card, but it's still very good. Next, we've got Slip Out the Back. This is an uncommon. It's an instant for a single blue mana. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It phases out. Cool, so we got phasing. Phasing's a funny mechanic. It's a mechanic, too, that is not very beginner-friendly, I don't think. I mean, on the one hand, maybe it should be, because you think phases out, and then when it phases back in, everything's the same. But once a beginner has learned about when tokens leave the battlefield, they die, and auras fall off stuff when they're blinked, throwing phasing into the mix, which upends all of the stuff that a novice has learned, that can be confusing. But this is kind of a cool card. It works well with counter strategies, obviously, since it's putting counters on things. Kind of needs to. So I like that. It's kind of the reverse of Long Road Home or Otherworldly Journey or Teferi's Time Twist. We've got a bunch of these things that will blink something, and then when it re-enters the battlefield, put a counter on it. This thing does the opposite in the sense that it puts the counter on first, and then it sort of blinks it, except importantly, it doesn't blink it. It phases it out. This is a card that works very well with counters and equipment and auras and all that kind of stuff. What it doesn't work well with, of course, is blink, since you're not actually blinking anything. You're not going to rebuy your ETBs and so on. This is also a card that you can use aggressively, and I've done that in a blue tempo deck. This was really quite a nice card in that sense. I mean, unsummon probably better, but unsummon not in the cube. Usually you'll use this on your own guys. I don't think this is an amazing card, but it's a fun one to play around with. Blank opponent's removal, phase your person out, make it a little bigger. Okay, onward. On to black. There's just one black card. I said the same thing when we were doing the Aleasis review. This is Lethal Scheme. This is the first of our cards from the Commander product. It's a rare. It's an instant that costs 2 black. It has Convoke, and it says destroy target creature or planeswalker. Each creature that convoked Lethal Scheme connives. Neat. This is a good card. In this environment, this is actually quite a good removal spell. I like removal to be more expensive here and a little more limited here than I do in Aleasis, since this is a lower powered environment that I want to be a little slower. But you can power out this removal more cheaply if you'd like, and it does this cute stuff where you get to loot a bunch, you get to bin stuff, you get to put counters on stuff potentially, so it works with a whole bunch of strategies that this cube is interested in, or that you might be interested in when playing this cube. Okay, red cards. First we've got Jaxus the Troublemaker. This is a rare, 3 and a red for a legendary creature human warrior. It's a 2/3. You can pay red and tap and discard a card in order to create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. That's a lot of words, but we're not done yet. This card also has Blitz for 1 and a red, which is to say you can cast this for its Blitz cost for just 2 mana instead of 4 mana, and it gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card, and sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. This is a cool card. It does a lot of stuff. It's 4 mana for a 2/3, which doesn't sound great. And you can't do anything immediately with it if you hardcast it, because it's going to have Summoning Sickness. And then activated ability is a tap ability. Pay a red, tap, and discard a card. But if you get to untap with it, you get to start making copies of your guys. It's like a Kiki-Jiki kind of thing. And when that token dies, you get to draw a card. That's neat. Wow. I mean, you did have to discard a card in order to do this, so you're doing a weird rummaging with this card. That's a cool ability, I think. So this is no Kiki-Jiki, obviously, but also Kiki-Jiki doesn't really belong in this environment. So here we've got a much watered down one, and I think that's fine. It's also cute that you can pay 2 to blitz this thing out, and you can just swing with it, and then it'll die, and then it'll replace itself. But also, if you have another spare red mana, you can blitz this out, and then you can use that activated ability, which is going to cost another red, and discard a card, but then you can copy something better, potentially. And that way you get to do the copying thing immediately. You know, you're presumably copying something that's going to do something. You've probably got ETBs or LTBs with your stuff you're interested in copying. There's a token strategy in this cube, so this interacts well with that. That's a fun little card, and one that's not broken. I mean, 4 is kind of a lot for this card, but I think that's okay here. Okay, next, Rob the Archives. This is an uncommon for 1 and a red, a sorcery. It has casualty 1. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. Oh, I talked about this card a lot already, of course, in the earlier part of this set review. This card's okay. I wanted to like this card more than I do, but honestly, having to do it this turn, that's such a knock against this card. It's a sorcery. That doesn't make like worlds of difference on this card, but it does make a difference. I'm kind of down on it. Next, we've got Unlucky Witness, uncommon, single red mana pip. It's a 1/1. When Unlucky Witness dies, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play one of those cards. This card I still like. We talked about it in Elaesis as well, of course. It's better here than in Elaesis because there is an Aristocrats deck. Red is often an important color for an Aristocrats deck. All that is to say that if you can sacrifice this thing at will, then that increases the value of the card. You're presumably getting some other value off of the death of the creature in various ways. So this can add up to a nice little package that replaces itself. Let me pause to say that firstly, CubeCon, everyone come to CubeCon. It'll be in Madison, Wisconsin, October 20th through 23rd, 2022. So excited that this thing is back on the menu again after, 2 years of delay. Thanks to World Events. It's going to be a really fun time. We've got a long weekend, 4 days of cubing planned. There's going to be a competitive element. There's going to be fun, friendly, non-competitive elements. There's going to be prizes. There's swag. We're partnering with a tabletop gaming convention called Gamehole Con, so you'll have access to all of the cool stuff that they're doing as well. We're going to have roundtable discussions about cube design and cube play. There's going to be vendors. It's going to be an awesome time. I can't wait, and I very much hope to meet you there and get our cube on. What else? Cultic Cube is supported by you. I've got a Patreon with all sorts of cool perks. Please do check that out. You can support me in other ways, such as making purchases via my affiliate link at places like TCG Player. And I've got an Etsy store where I sell tokens from the Cultic Bestiary project. So as you may know, I've got more than 80 tokens all done in the style of medieval illuminated manuscripts. I love the series. I've got a whole bunch of tokens for New Capenna as well. So I've got your token needs covered. I appreciate your support. Okay, onward to green. Chaldea Guardian. Chaldea Guardian? I don't know, you guys. Chaldea. That's what I'm going to go with. This is from the Commander set. It costs 3 and a green for a creature human soldier who's a 4/3. It's a rare. Whenever Chaldea Guardian or another creature with mana value 4 or greater dies, create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. And it has Blitz for 2 and a green. So you can cast it for 2 and a green. It'll have haste. And then it will die at the beginning of the next end step. It'll draw a card when it dies. This card, it may not look super exciting. It's 4 mana for a 4/3. That doesn't sound great. When it or another creature you control with mana value 4 or greater dies, you get to create 2 1/1s. So when it dies, it replaces itself with 2 1/1s. That's nice. You also may not be getting super excited about that. It is cool that it will do this cute thing when other expensive creatures you control die. I like that. Here's the thing though, I've only played this card in one deck, and I don't know if it was totally the right shell for it. I was playing it in a Naya tokens deck, and as you might imagine, I didn't have many expensive creatures in the deck. I was interested in making tokens, not in casting enormous creatures. I think there were 2 other cards in the deck that cost 4 or more. So this thing wasn't creating tokens off the death of other things for me. So then is it good enough if it just creates 2 1/1s itself? It's not super duper exciting, but when you've got various token payoffs and when you have an intangible virtue or something in play, that's cool. So it's not nothing. For 4 mana, you get a 4/3, but then down the road, you're going to get 2 1/1s. So on this installment plan, you end up getting 6 power and 5 toughness. I love that it has Blitz, and I was a little wary of blitzing it at first, but then I just blitzed it. I often ended up just blitzing it. Like if I had some better turn 4 lined up, where I was maybe going to double spell on turn 4 or something, on turn 3, I would often just blitz this card, and it's kind of not bad. So for 3 mana, you get to send 4 damage at him, you make 2 1/1s, and you get to draw a card. That's really not a bad package, it seems to me. So I don't know that this card makes a huge splash, but I think it's kind of cool. I think, honestly, Petty Nobility isn't the best home for this card. Aleasis definitely wouldn't be a home for this card. It's just a do-nothing in Aleasis. But even Petty Nobility, I'm wary of going too high up the curve in the cube in general. So if you have an environment that goes bigger, that has ramp and cheat and other ways of creating bigger cards, maybe this thing goes up some in value if it has the possibility of allowing you to spit out more tokens. But also I think you can ignore that and the card's kind of fine by itself. Okay, next we've got Fight Rigging. This is a gold card. It costs 2 and a green for an enchantment. It has Hideaway 5. Hideaway, that's cool. I'm excited Hideaway came back. If you don't remember Hideaway, here's what it does. When this enchantment enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then, if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Neat. I love these sort of do-nothing enchantments, build-around enchantments. I've got a lot of those in Petty Nobility, and in fact I have to restrain myself from just adding more and more. So it puts a counter on something every turn. That's kind of okay at 3 mana. So I like that it feeds the +1/+1 counter deck. I like that it has the Hideaway thing and it has the possibility of replacing itself. When I've played with this card a little bit, I really enjoyed the play patterns it created as well, just in as much as I wanted to get my card eventually, which requires ticking something up to 7 power or greater. But also, you know as well as I that it's often more advantageous to distribute power widely rather than build up one towering behemoth that just gets doombladed or whatever. So there was some tension in whether I was going to try to build up to get my free card or just go wide. Often I never got my card. So it was a really, really good one, and I was willing to shoulder the risk of going tall in order to get the card. Anyway, interesting card. I like it. Okay, now we have another commander card. This is First Responder. It's a rare, costs 3 and a green for a creature ogre citizen, and it's a 3/3. It has Vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, you may return another creature you control to its owner's hand, then put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to that creature's power on First Responder. I haven't gotten to play with this card yet. It's a hill giant with Vigilance, but it unlocks both blink strategies and +1/+1 counter strategies. Of course, it's not actually blinking stuff, it's returning it to hand. That's not ideal in a blink deck, so maybe the card's not amazing. I don't know. I play other cards like this in the environment, more in white, as you might imagine, like White Mane Lion or Core Skyfisher. I mean, they're not the same thing. They're also like way cheaper than this thing. So do you really want to spend 4 and then after that start returning stuff to hand? I don't know. We'll see. But if you're returning things like Backup Agent, that very first card we talked about, or, you know, any of its friends in green, like Pollen Bright Druid, then, I mean, you could see how that could do good work eventually. All right, moving on. Killer Service. This is a card from the Commander set as well. It is a rare for 2 and a green. It's an enchantment. Another card I have not played with, but here goes. When Killer Service enters the battlefield, create a number of food tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay 2 generic mana and sacrifice a token. If you do, create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. So for 3 mana, you make a food. That's not great. That's not great at all. Here, I'm assuming we're playing 1v1. It's a different situation if you're in multiplayer, if you're playing Commander, obviously. At the beginning of your end step, you can sacrifice a creature. You have to pay 2 mana for the privilege of killing something, sacrificing something, but then you get a 4/4. I'm not sure how amazing this card is. Paying 3 for a food token is not great. or paying 5 mana to get a vanilla 4/4 also sounds pretty suspect, but you can see how this could be cool in a token strategy, in an aristocrat strategy that's shearing into green, which is possible, in just a strategy that has the capability of pumping out some treasures or food or whatever, or clues. And these are all possibilities in the environment. I don't know how high I am in this card. You can't just do this whenever you want. It's only at your end step. You can do it one time, and you have to pay for it. So all of that's adding up to an awful lot of restrictions. Like, I don't know, the card is probably not that great. I still want to test it. I just haven't gotten a chance to actually play it yet. Okay, Gala Greeters. This is a rare for 1 and a green, a creature elf druid who's a 1/1, and it has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. So here are the 3 options. Number 1, put a +1/+1 counter on Gala Greeters. Number 2, create a tapped treasure token. Number 3, you gain 2 life. I like this card a lot in this environment in specific. What a very good card this is. It's 2 mana for a 1/1, not an impressive thing, but what a cool little engine, and what a carefully balanced one too. Good job, WotC, tweaking the knobs on this to make it a fun but lower powered thing. So this thing doesn't get to just go wild getting counters on it, and I kind of like that. But it's not like you can only put a counter on it once and then that's it, no more benefit from triggering this thing. It has other benefits. So this is a cool card that works with +1/+1 counters. It works with life gain. It makes treasures, which, can obviously be useful in various ways in addition to just fixing and ramping. Although you have to wait for the treasure to untap to get that benefit from it. So I like this card, and it's a card that creates interesting decisions as well. Interesting sequencing decisions about when you cast your creatures. And if you can create creatures at instant speed on your opponent's turn, then you get to go through this whole cycle on their turn too. That's nice. This is a fun card that quietly does a lot. Final green card is Jewel Thief. This is a common for 2 and a green. It's a 3/3 creature cat rogue. It has vigilance, it has trample, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a treasure. My goodness, what a very pushed Centaur Courser kind of thing, right? It's got a couple of keywords, and it creates this ramp and fixing thing for you. It could be a blink target if you just want to create more treasures, but also it's just a fine beater. It's a good pushed beater. This isn't an outrageously strong card, but it is an extremely efficiently costed card that has lots of upside tacked onto it. An aggressively costed card, especially for a common, obviously. So I think the card is good. It doesn't actually do anything amazingly synergistic in the environment besides make that treasure. This card's in here for efficiency more than for helping a particular plan, which isn't a glowing recommendation for the card, and which means that the card is may not be long for this cube. Onward to gold cards. Our first one is from the Commander set. It's Cryptic Pursuit. Costs 2 blue-red for an enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, manifest the top card of your library. To manifest something, you put that card onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature. Turn it face up at any time for its mana cost if it's a creature card. Whenever a face down creature you control dies, exile it. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast that card until the end of your next turn. Oh my gosh, I'm in love with this card. We talked about this in the last set review for my higher powered environment. I'm trying it there as well. I hadn't gotten to play with it yet. I've played with it some now, and I love the card so much. You want to put it in an Is It Spells deck, obviously. If you're not putting it there, then what are you even doing with the card? So the card's kind of narrow in that sense, but it makes so much value. As you cast spells, you're getting free bears out of the deal, right? So you like cantrip and you create a bear and you draw a card or whatever. That's awesome. So it's this army in a can. A friend on Twitter, Crewman Wilson, he streams cubes sometimes. He's a good person. He called it a bad, wonky, empty the Warrens, I believe. And I can totally see that. But look, you cast spells, you're pumping out bears, that's cool. And the board states that it creates are interesting and a real headache for the opponent, because any creatures that you've got face down, you can flip. So if you've got a bunch of open mana, then opponents' blocks and opponents' attacks become just more fraught, because at any point you could flip something and it's a creature. Presumably a better creature than a bear. It's going to do some other fun stuff. Also, another reason their decisions become harder is because they could be giving you cards if they're killing, or if you're blocking with and allowing to be killed instants or sorceries, and then you get to cast those if you can this turn. They don't go to hand, unfortunately. You have to be able to use them this turn. You go into combat with a bunch of open mana, and your opponent's life becomes a real headache. Obviously, that's the point of Morph and Manifest and so on, and if you're in it for this kind of sub-game, that's cool. Onward, Ginny Fae Jetmir's Second. We talked about this a lot last time too. This is a rare. The casting cost is crazy. I'll get to it in a second, I guess. So Ginny Fae is a legendary creature elf druid, and she's a 3/3. Her casting cost is 3 converted mana, but it's odd because it's a hybrid red or green, a green, and then a hybrid green or white. You can cast her for pure green, green, or you can cast her for Naya colors, or you can cast her for either Gruul or Selesnya colors, provided you've got 2 greens in either case. So green, red, or green, white. Okay, if you would create 1 or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance. What a good card. She's sort of a lord for token strategies. She's a 3 mana 3/3, so the floor is just like fine. And then if you've got some token production, then she can likely make your tokens better. I've played with her in a few decks now, and I've played her in a deck that was, hardcore tokens deck, and she's amazing. I've also just thrown her into a deck. I threw her into a Gruul deck. I picked her up late-ish, I got the card in pack 2, and I was pretty sure I was Gruul, and I had some minor amount of token production, so I just kind of took a flyer on her and grabbed her. And then after that, I sort of prioritized taking token makers. At least that was a tiebreaker in subsequent picks. The point is, the deck wound up being an aggressive-ish Gruul deck that just happened to have some amount of token making in it, some reasonable amount of token making in it, but it wasn't trying to go all in on making a whole bunch of tokens. And all that is to say that Ginny Fae was just a really excellent value card that upgraded a whole bunch of other cards in the deck. Or she was a 3 mana 3/3 that didn't do anything, and that was kind of okay too. All right, next we've got Scheming Fence. This is a rare for a white and a blue for 2 mana total. A creature, human citizen, and it's a 2/3. As Scheming Fence enters the battlefield, you may choose a non-land permanent. Activated abilities of the chosen permanent can't be activated, and Scheming Fence has all activated abilities of the chosen permanent except for loyalty abilities. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate those abilities. Super sweet card. It's a 2 mana 2/3, so again, the floor is fine. Of course, it's gold. You get to turn off opposing stuff. There aren't any 1 mana elves in this cube. There aren't signets and so on. So his value as an early disruptive piece isn't as high here as it is in faster, more powerful environment. But obviously there's tons of activated abilities running around in the cube, so the guy is going to do something. And also, if you've got nothing else to do on turn 2, but you've got a white and a blue mana, you can just run him out, and you've played a 2/3 on turn 2, and that's not the worst thing in the world. But clearly, it can do an awful lot more than that, and it's so sweet to steal the opponent's abilities. Ugh, it's just so annoying for them. Okay, we've got 1 colorless card. It's Currency Converter. This is from the Commander set. It's 1 generic mana for an artifact. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard. You can pay 2 and tap to draw a card and then discard a card. It's got a second activated ability. You can just tap it to put a card exiled with Currency Converter into your graveyard. If it's a land card, create a treasure token. If it's a non-land card, create a 2/2 black rogue creature token. This is a card I've gotten to play with just a little bit since my last review when I hadn't touched the card before. I like this card. On reflection, I don't know that it's that great in Elaesis, because it's just kind of slow. We talked about it in comparison to Retrofitter Foundry last time. I think it's a lot worse than Retrofitter Foundry in the little bit of testing I've done with it. But good for this environment, probably. Good for Petty Nobility. It's slow to get going. If you're just trying to make a 2/2, then you cast this thing for 1, you pay 2 and tap it to loot, and then you can exile the card that you discard. So you've already paid 3 mana and tapped the thing, then you gotta wait till next turn when you can untap the thing, and then you can tap it again and make your 2/2, or make your treasure token. So it takes time more than anything. I mean, even more than the mana. Doing this whole thing is kind of a process. Of course, if you've got other ways of discarding, the card can be better. I was played in at a deck with Thrill of Possibility, for instance. From Theros Beyond Death, it's an instant for 1 and a red. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, and then draw 2 cards. So that was kind of cute. If there's any way in which you're discarding, and you've got Currency Converter out, then you can exile those things with Currency Converter, the things you're discarding, and then convert them into value. That's neat. It's a fun card to play with. Finally, we have the Triomes, the Shards, Grixis, Esper, Bant, Naya, Jund. They're all called weird things though, like Jetmir's Garden and whatever. I'm sure you know what the Triomes are. I won't go into these a great deal. You probably know if you want these things or not, and I talked about them quite a bit last time, so I won't bore you with that discussion again. But I'm happy to have them here. I'm glad the cycle is completed. So I'm adding 27 cards from the set to Petty Nobility. That's not bad. That's a pretty stacked set for the cube. I'm excited. And even if you discount those Triomes, then that's what, 22 cards. Lots of fun stuff to test. I'm having fun playing with it. What am I most excited about? I like some of these cool engine cards, Cryptic Pursuit and Ginny Faye. Those are really fun cards. I talked last time about how much I love these blue cards, the ones with Casualty that do some other stuff. I still love those, of course. Yeah, that's some of the stuff that I'm hyped about. Thanks for finishing a second tour through Streets of New Capenna with me. Let's keep hanging out and chatting cube.